Hello everyone. Welcome to the Wormhole Educate. I hope we're all as excited as I am to get started with this program to learn more about everything wormhole, bridging, token transfers and such. So today, I'm Patrick, Operations Manager at Encode Club. I will be likely your program manager throughout this program. So anything related to what sessions, Discord questions, I'll kind of be on there to kind of track as much as I can and help out if anyone wants to message me. So yeah, again, I'm Patrick. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter or Discord, you'll find me always active there. I'll try to respond to all messages or questions that anyone might have. So about Encode Club, we're a community of developers, professionals, and talented students in emerging tech. We host multiple education programs such as this, help you advance your career, work with transformative companies and such. So yeah. So anyway. What we do, plenty of educates and boot camps similar to this one, as well as hackathons. I believe we've had wormhole hackathons before, and I'm sure we have more coming up. Anything that you're interested in, I'm sure we do. So we have a big community, over 500,000 developers such as yourselves. So the workshop schedule is as follows. Today we'll be going over an introduction to Wormhole. I'll briefly be bringing Urban and Pauline to the stage, and they'll be going over some things with you, introduce themselves, and then get into things. Then later this week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'll be having the other workshops. These will continue for 4 weeks, as you can see here. Most of them are announced. Anything that will not be, we'll always kind of keep you updated in Discord with the ones that were to come up. So yeah, join the Discord, very important thing to keep up with all the resources. And I will introduce Pauline and Urban to the stage right now. Hi, Pauline.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, yeah. I think
still morning, right? In the UK?
Yeah. Well, 4-ish, yeah.
Nice.
Hi, Urban.
Hello, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. Do you want to try and share your screen?
Yes, I will try and share my screen. I sure hope I will succeed.
Yeah, perfect.
There we go. Okay, we can kick it off, right, Patrick? Cool.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, awesome. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I think both Pauline and me are very excited to be talking to you once again. I think the Encode engagements are always very high quality, so we're very, very happy to be coming back and delivering some education this time around as well. So to kick it off, let's talk a little bit about Wormhole, what it is not, and why we're even here. But before we do the Wormhole piece and we talk about what Wormhole is and so on, I think it's worth stepping back and kind of understanding why Wormhole is even important, or why generally interoperability between different blockchains is an interesting concept and why people are excited about this. So on the screen here, you have something that people usually don't see but this is a internet cable that is laid on the bottom of the ocean. There's actually tons of these cables across the planet that literally physically connect us, and this is how they look. So, and this is the actual map of these cables. So this is a very, very important thing, right? Because if you take a step back and you think about this, we are literally physically connected one to another. Yes, you might have, your Wi-Fi signal here, but ultimately there's a cable between me and Pauline and Patrick and Omji and everybody. The interesting part here is that it wasn't always like that. These were kind of secluded continents, even countries, and some even are, right? Some even are today, but less and less, right? We're more and more interconnected, and this is kind of the physical proof of what's going on. Now, there's also a second phenomenon that we saw and are still seeing over the past couple of years, which is there's more and more blockchains and there's more and more cryptocurrencies that are out there. So an interesting chart that you can see here is just the number of blockchains that we have out there. Now, apologies that this is not fully up to date. It's up to the year 22, which still gives you a good indication. What is actually happening over the past couple of 2-3 years is I would assume this is a hockey stick like chart, because Ethereum has pivoted into that direction. There's more and more tooling for building L2 chains. So there's more and more blockchains that are out there. So the chart here is directionally correct. And this also tells you, right, that these are all almost independent ecosystems that are being built. Right now we have it up to like 120. I would assume we're probably in the 400 to 500 at this point, right? So you end up with several hundred blockchain ecosystems that are almost isolated islands, right? So you can see where we're going with this. There's definitely a need that is starting to arise, that these blockchain ecosystems start to talk to each other. There's another very important aspect of this, and that is what we have here is the decentralized to centralized exchange spot ratio. So basically the trading volume on DEXs and centralized exchanges, and it's clearly going up, right? So the on-chain activity generally is picking up. And why is this important? Why is this chart even here? Because without on-chain decentralized solutions for bridging, you have essentially a need to go to a centralized exchange in order to be able to quote-unquote bridge funds, right? If you wanted to go from Bitcoin to Ethereum before there was some sort of bridging solution, or from Ethereum to Solana or whatever, you had to go to a centralized exchange, deposit funds, and then take them out on the other blockchain. So this was kind of and people still do this. This is still a valid solution, but generally we see more and more volume happening on chain. There's more transaction volume, not just like in terms of dollar value, but there's more on-chain activity in general. So we see a couple of these trends coming together, and if you zoom out and you look at this over the past couple of years, you see that it is actually all accelerating towards this. Now, this is where the high-level concept of blockchain interoperability comes in, right? It's a mouthful. It's a very difficult word. I'm always looking forward to Pauline saying that big word. We have both our challenges with that, but generally speaking, blockchain interoperability is a concept which loosely describes the ability of different blockchain ecosystems to communicate with each other. That might be just by sending tokens, sending messages, sending data, and that is kind of reflected then in all of these different metrics. Why would you need this? Well, because you want users to be able to migrate from one ecosystem to another on-chain. You want your solutions to be scalable. You want to see TVL growth, right? And you want to unlock new use cases, because different blockchain ecosystems generally have not just a different value proposition, but have different tech that enable the building of different use cases. So all in all, when when there's a bottom line, does it make sense for you to go multi-chain to tap into other ecosystems? Most likely, yeah. Most likely, most of the applications out there, or most of the ecosystems at least, would benefit from having the ability to grow, to have users migrate on-chain, and to have TVL migrate, and so on. So this absolutely is a very, very interesting concept. And as you'll see later on, numbers kind of show this as well. So, all right, we finally come to the important questions. What is Wormhole? What is it even, right? Well, why are we here, and what are we doing? So Wormhole is one of the leading interoperability platforms that's powering multi-chain bridges and applications at scale. This is a fancy way of saying Wormhole is a solution that allows you to go from chain A to chain B in a decentralized way. Right? That is essentially what it does, and that is why this is so interesting in the concept of what we're basically going to be talking about. Now, I mentioned a few numbers, and to be frank, some of these numbers truly are staggering, right? Wormhole has, up to this day, facilitated over $58 billion in volume, which is just a crazy number, right? All of that has come in over 1 billion messages, and it's powering over 200 applications. Now, Wormhole is available across over 40 blockchains. And the interesting bit, it works across 6 different runtimes, right? So we've got EVM, SVM, we've got Near, Polkadot, and so on, different runtimes that are supported. So, you know, if you think about what I've just said across, you know, we've got all of these cables laid across the different continents and the oceans, and all of those blockchains that are coming up and all of these users fragmented across all of these blockchains. Well, the consequence of that growth and that advance is reflected in these numbers, right? There's more and more volume that we see. There's more and more use cases, more applications actually benefiting from this. So, like I said, we are integrated with over 40 blockchains. I'm not going to go over one by one, and this chart actually needs to be updated, but there's a link at the bottom that leads to our documentation. I don't know, Pauline, if you want to grab that and just paste it in. That is going to give you a full list of all the blockchains and how they're integrated. All right, I want to leave you also with a tool that you can use on your end, but generally this is just a very interesting view. If you go to wormholescan.com, you can play around with this and, you know, check different charts, parameters. You can, you know, adjust the filtering. I've grabbed this screenshot yesterday evening, so this is fairly up to date. But you see, we can get a good sense of, you know, what is happening on chain, where is liquidity flowing, and what users are doing. So yesterday evening, for the past 7 days, Ethereum outflows, you see the total number and where they were going. So mostly Solana, Sui, Base, Arbitrum, and so on. So wormholescan.com is definitely something you can have a look at. Yeah, so Wormhole is also built by a number of teams. It is not just you know, me and Pauline at the foundation. It's actually across multiple organizations that work together to build what you all see as Wormhole, right? And in reality, there's multiple core contributors that work very much in sync to build quote unquote Wormhole. So there's a couple of big names. Before like name dropping here and even transitioning over to Pauline's part, but I think it's important to note and just admire what is happening here, right? Because you know, I've been in the blockchain space for a couple of years, and we've always spoken, oh, when the institutions are going to come and the big money is going to roll in and the important people are going to come. Well, this is actually happening now because you see BlackRock, Hamilton Lane, AMD, Flow Traders. These are important large institutions that are heavy hitters in the Web2 space as well, in the traditional non-blockchain space as well. So I think it's important to note that Wormhole as a whole and its contributors are working with many of the leading institutions, organizations, companies, projects, both in terms of Web2 and Web3. To give you a Web3 example, Uniswap is a very interesting use case. Uniswap is, you know, we all know Uniswap. I'm not going to pitch Uniswap here, but Wormhole was basically the only unconditionally approved cross-chain protocol by Uniswap's Bridge Assessment Committee. So essentially, Wormhole is powering the Uniswap multi-chain governance. As you know, Uniswap has multiple deployments, and Wormhole is powering that. So aside from BlackRock, Securitize, Hamilton Lane, AMD, Uniswap is also one of the household names across the Web3 space that uses Wormhole. So not going too deep, and I understand there's a lot of information on this slide, but I wanted to show like a high-level picture of what are some of the use cases that you could build. I think DeFi is quite an interesting one in general. It's very obvious. I mentioned governance, token transfers, Oracle feeds, and if these native multi-chain applications are something I think not the easiest to build, but definitely we see some teams going multi-chain first. So yeah, like I said, I'm not going to go into all of the details, but generally there's a number of different use cases that can be unlocked and served with having a good interoperability solution within your application. So that is it for me. I'm going to pass it to the wonderful Pauline now. She's going to take you through the technical architecture and some of the more geeky technical things. So Pauline, take it away.
Yeah, so I am the geeky technical person. I'll take over. I am so my name is Pauline. I am the DevRel at Wormhole Foundation. So yeah, I will cover quickly about what is give you a bit of overview of the architecture. So there's a few words, like a few terms that they are just important because they are really the core messaging protocol. They are basically built on this. So whether you have an idea about what Wormhole is or the way we can integrate it, these are the terms that you're going to see frequently. So VAA is a verified action approval. So basically, it's if you think of it, is what will get emitted as a receipt. So it's what will allow you to basically making sure that the message that you got sent has this receipt that is emitted by the guardian. And so the guardian, there's a set of validators. So what they do is that they are the only one who are allowed to validate the VAA. And this is a proof that the message you are sending from chain A to chain B is correct and legit. And the relayer, basically, you can consider them as the what facilitates the message to be relayed from one chain to another. So these are very, if you don't really know how cross-chain messages work, it might be a bit blurry, but basically it's only to tell you that these kind of terms are going to come up very often in the documentation. So they're quite important for you to know. Yeah. So how does Wormhole work? So basically, I will go over all the products later on, but what it does, the core messaging primitive, so everything Wormhole built on top of is the idea, as I said, that you send a message from chain A to chain B. So you have an emitter address, and this is the address of the caller. So it can be, for instance, a contract, a smart contract that is in your application, and that will call the Wormhole call contract. Then you have the sequence, it's an integer, so it's an ID to say that this message is really this message. Then you have a payload, that is a message to be passed as bytes. And then the consistency level is what we call the finality level, is basically the message is only completed once it has reached the finality level. So for instance, on Ethereum, it's about 17 minutes. So when you send a message, when I mean a message, we also mean a token transfer, right? In most common use cases is sending, for instance, one token from one chain to another chain. So what will most likely happen is that you will want to burn on or lock on the chain A, and then you will mint again on the chain B. But for the minting to happen, you need to wait for the finality level. So that is the only way you can actually making sure that the minting is and the transaction is not reversible from that stage. Yep. Okay, so this is a basic flow, and then we quickly go over the following flow. But basically, you have a source contract on the source chain. So let's take the source chain is Base, and the target chain is Solana. Okay, so you will have a source contract that is a Wormhole core contract. So it doesn't mean it is the contract that you have written on your app, but you will have to call that contract. That is basically the premises of the messages. And then it will be a set of components that are going to happen off-chain. and then back again after it would end up on the target chain. So this is also on-chain. So on the basic flow, what you need to understand is that you call a core contract that is only, so each network has a specific core contract with a core contract address, and they are unique to each one of the network. That happen on-chain, then you get to an off-chain component with the guardian, the validate, and so on and so on. And then you end up to mint and to mint on the target chain again, and that is also on-chain. So this is a bit more, it's a bit more complete, okay? So as you can see, you start from the start and you will have two main methods to call. So you will have a publish method is usually what you will want to do. So why do you want to publish a message? It basically also means that you initiate a transaction. So the source contract is your own contract. It can be anything, any smart contract. Then you will call the method that's called publish message. And then you will call the Wormhole call contract from the target chain. Then you will emit this message, and the off-chain component, you can see they're all yellow at this point. So you have the whole Guardian network, which are in charge of validating the request. Basically, what they do is that they make sure that whatever you're asking and whatever you're sending over is correct. And is legit. Okay, so they are the threshold is 13 out of 19. So as soon as you have 13 guardians, they actually validate the VAA, they sign it, then the relayer will send it to the target chain on the target contract, and then it will finish by verifying the VAA on the Wormhole call contract. On the VAA thing, all of this, actually, Urban just showed you before, but Wormhole scan is basically the equivalent of Etherscan for us. And you can actually track every single step very easily. When you go you take any transaction just as an exercise, you can just take a transaction that is on Wormhole scan and you can see what's happening. You can see where it's going to be pending. You can see how long it's pending. Finality level are very different from one chain to another, so you also have to remember that. And all of this, you can really see it through Wormhole scan. So for instance, even if you need at some point to fetch your VAA, you can also do that. There's API, Wormhole scan has an entire set of tooling, and some of it is basically the Wormhole scan API, and it's extremely useful. So I really recommend you to go over Wormhole scan just to have a good understanding of how things work. So yeah. Okay, so what we're interested in, the architecture is nice and the concepts are interesting, but what can you build and how can you build with Wormhole? So think of Wormhole as a set of tools that you can stack on top of each other if you have a need for. So it is not really to be considered as, so it's not a blockchain, obviously, but it's really important to consider it as a tool. So there are a few products. We can split it into application layer and infrastructure layer, but I like to think of it really as you take what you need. Okay, so if you need, it's very important that when you build something or when you have an idea, you really understand what your needs are, and based on that, you will choose the correct or the most appropriate option for you, for instance. So on the application layer, you have a connect. So a connect is just a React widget. So it's 3 lines of code. It's very easy to implement. You have a config file, and it's very straightforward. The Wormhole Connect is basically if you have built something with multi-chain, but you don't want to create yourself your own widget, or you don't have to, you really want to abstract a lot of the complexity here and have a basically an entry door on your front end, you can use the connect. But the connect is built on top of the core messaging. Okay, so it would definitely use Wormhole under the hood, but in reality, it's a React widget, so it's very easy. The SDK is what you usually use a SDK for, is to abstract all the complexities. So you have a lot of function that you can call, and it makes it very easy for you if you want to use Wormhole as like on the more general term. I think it's an easier way to look at it. Settlement is the latest product from Wormhole, and it's faster than finality transfer. So basically, what it does, it's similar to intent protocol, and you will have a finality layer that you can use. And two things that it does. The main thing that it offers is a very cheap and fast transfer. And faster than finality means that you do not have to wait for finality, as the name suggests, which means that when you will make transfer, you will have, that will be explained later on, but you won't have to wait for finality, for instance, on Ethereum or whatever chain you are waiting for, which is extremely important in some cases. So anything that is very fast, I would recommend you to go and look at settlement. On the infrastructure layer, we have the native token transfer. It's going to be session for all of those. So I don't get into any sorts of detail, but native token transfer is an open framework that will make any token natively multi-chain. So that basically means that you won't have to bridge. You're not going to have a wrap asset, which that you will end up having if you use the core contract bridge, for instance. Native token transfer is your token will be natively moving across different all the ecosystem that we are supporting, and that is in some cases an extremely good option, especially because it's flexible and highly flexible. Yes. Queries is something, if you want to have on-demand cross-chain data, very important. Again, if you go on Wormhole Scan, you can see what kind of data. So for instance, Pith is an oracle that is built also with queries. So that is a very, very specific product, but it's extremely fast for querying on-chain data, which usually are not necessarily on-chain. And the messaging is the core protocol that everything is built on top of. So I kind of explained that, but I will drop a link into the chat about a video where I did a while back regarding the overview. So it exactly repeats what I just said, but in a bit, in a bit more concise way. So I'll drop that in the chat as well. Urban.
Shall I move forward? Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah, so I just want to show you, this is what Connect is. So Connect is basically, you will use you can customize everything. It's a React widget, but it's really, there's nothing you can't do with, in terms of like the styling, and you can customize the routes. Everything is very well explained. So you really don't have to worry about building your own component, and everything will work basically out of the box. So you can combine also a lot of those products. So for instance, if you want to make entity with Connect, it's completely, it's usually a very common combo. So PancakeSwap use it. You have many big protocols that use it. So next time you see that widget, it's powered by Wormhole. Yes. Yeah, these are the kind of entity examples. So there is the W token, but there are many other examples. So Jitosol is also using entity, but for instance, Rapstate is also one of them. So you can see that it's fairly represented in DeFi. and it's a really good solution. So if you want to look at how they use it, we can also send you all the GitHub repo so you can see the implementation. Who uses queries, for instance? Well, WorldCoin uses queries. So what they do is that they use that to fetch all the on-chain WorldCoin ID from Ethereum, and when you want to use it on Solana. So this is one of the use case to use queries. Thank you. This is the answer. I didn't go into much detail, but I think we can, you have our Twitter and our Telegram. If you have any question along the way, you can always reach out to us. And it's gonna be many more session. They are gonna deep dive into all of those products. So you really, if this is just like all new and all at once, do not worry, we will definitely help you more on that. And yeah, good luck. And then we're super excited to do this whole series again. So yeah, any questions?
Yeah, we actually had two questions in the chat. So let's see, how are the Guardian validators selected? So Steve, this is a really good question. There's currently 19 Guardians in the set. And as far as I'm aware, this is not being expanded at the moment. These are all highly reputable companies that run validator or staking infrastructure, not just for Wormhole, but rather generally across the Web3 space. You're going to see some very familiar names. So I'm unfortunately, both Pauline and me have not been long enough with Wormhole to be able to tell you how they were selected, but I can tell you it is not something that we would just be adding or removing. This is actually going to stay fairly stable in the long term. We also had Steve ask another question. Maybe Pauline, you might know this better. Does the native token transfers imply it is not possible to hack a bridge that issues wrapped tokens?
So actually, it's a good question because I have done a video about this. It's a common assumption that people think of bridge as having a wrapped asset. Okay. So you will have a wrapped asset token if you use the core contract bridge. And when you do that, you basically delegate the ownership and everything. Basically, the core contract will deploy a stock contract for you. Therefore, you do not have ownership about this wrapped assets. And this is a trade-off people need to be very aware of, because some people just want to go on the bridge and just like quickly deploy to a lot of chains, and they don't really mind to not have full ownership because they don't want to touch anything. But a lot of team actually would like to preserve the ownership. They would like to preserve the capability of upgrading or I don't know, updating metadata or choosing rate limiting, or all of this has to go through Entity. So actually, Entity is not using the core contract bridge. Entity do not use the bridge at all. Entity is basically you deploying natively a multi-chain token that you have full ownership, and you do whatever you want with it. Like, we are not controlling that. So it's very different than having a wrapped token. And for the other one, where does the locking of the token happen on the source chain, and those tokens need to provide access to mint on the Tegra chain? Yes, so basically this is it. Like, when you use Entity, the locking, you have two deployment model, which will all be covered, okay, in the next session. So, but you have two deployment model. You either have a hub and spoke model, which is very similar to a lock and mint, or you have a burn and mint model. So this is up to you. Usually the burn and mint are done for like new token, and the hub and spoke are kind of like, people prefer that when they want to upgrade an existing token. So yes, you will lock, basically, you will lock the token on chain A, and if you choose a hub and spoke, for instance, you will have the token locked on chain A, and they will be minted again on chain B. And then if you choose a burn and mint, then it's a regular burn and mint. So it will literally be burned from chain A and minted again on chain B. That's how it would happen. But yes, we have like a lot of resources about that, and it will be a full workshop by my colleague about this. So, but they're valid question for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe we give it like a minute if somebody has other questions as well. But I think, like Pauline, like you said, we are going to dive very deep into all of these topics as we move along through the different sessions. I think it's really important to also showcase some of the actual use cases and how this is being deployed in the wild. Is the Wormhole's core contracts open source?
Yes. Everything is open source. Everything is permissionless. So you can check everything on GitHub. If you go to the documentation or the GitHub repo, you'll see everything.
We have a few more questions in the questions tab. Someone asked, can I test Wormhole services on testnet?
Yes, of course, you can test everything on testnet. So you have to go on the documentation, and there is testnet ID. Like, one thing I have to mention here, because sometimes people don't know, the testnet ID or even the mainnet ID, they are different for Wormhole. They are specific to Wormhole. So for instance, Ethereum is not ID1, like for the chain, for instance. So you really have to refer to the documentation when it comes to that, because we are chain agnostic. So we don't follow the same chain ID as other, like, so we have our own chain ID. That's what I mean. So you have to go on the documentation and make sure you're using the correct chain ID. And so, yeah, everything is testable on testnet, of course.
How can you mint a token which you can't mint because of its already deployed token?
Yeah, well, you have a certain amount of token when you deploy a token. They are not all that's why you have either. Basically, you need to burn it on chain A and to mint it again on chain B. Otherwise, you will spend it twice. Like, it's called like double spending. So you must either lock it on chain A, so then it gets minted again, but it gets removed. It's like an accounting thing. You cannot just like remint a token. It's like, I have $20. And I go somewhere else and I have to use my $20, right? Like, I cannot just like create another $20 and keep mine and keep being able to use them, right? So, so yes, like it's a deployment model. So you will burn and or you will lock, and then you can mint it again. And then the same thing will happen on the other chain. Like, if the later on you want to send it from chain B to another chain, the same thing will happen again.
Yeah. A lot of NTT questions, Fred.
This might be yes. Okay, I have for this question, I have a video. What is the difference between wrapped and unwrapped native token? So native token cannot be wrapped. Wrapped asset is something that is the core contract is doing to your token to make sure they can use it via the bridge. And so you cannot have a native wrapped token. You can have a wrapped token, or you have a native token transfer, like a native token multi-chain if you want. So, but it's very normal that all those concepts are very new. Okay, how do you prevent invalid BAA or hard fork? Yes, like, these are very, I mean, security is very big at Wormhole, and it will be very difficult to, like, first, there is no hard fork, or yes, it could be an attack, of course, but basically the VAA has an ID, and it has to be validated by 13 validator. So if anything is wrong or anything is not functioning, it would just revert straight away. So it would be very hard, actually, to make a invalid VAA. Yep.
I think we answered all of these. Is somebody also typing?
I think there's one more in the questions tab. Someone asked, what are the differences in architecture between Wormhole and Layer 0? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a valid question. It's very different. We don't use the same mechanism. And also the products are all quite different. The idea is the same. You want to go multi-chain, but for instance, Layer 0 use a OFT standard, which is a token standard. So for instance, if you will want to, it's a bit less flexible than Entity in that sense, because we don't force you to use a token standard if you want to use Wormhole, and you are not locked in with Wormhole. So you will see it during the Entity demo. But for instance, if you want to use external verifier, if you want to add a lot of flexibility to your token design, you can definitely do that. Which, for instance, with Layer 0, you're locked in, right? Like, you have to use their standard, you have to use their network. You cannot really add any sort of verifier. You have to go with them. So that, in that sense, for instance, is very different.
Also, the validation mechanism for the messages in between is different, right? There's essentially a 2 out of 2 multisig that's in between. They call it a DVN network, which supposedly has like a network in the background. So a couple of differences without going deep into that, because both me and Pauline are not experts on the Layer 0 side, but there's a couple of obvious differences that you can find as well.
Yeah, you would, if you on the question from Solomon, like, if you will use the core contract bridge, then it would mint again on the destination chain. This is what, like, when you use a bridge, you end up with like a wrapped piece or wrapped whatever you have. So yeah, this is why you don't end up with a native token on both sides. You end up with a wrapped version, and this is not just Wormhole. It's how, like, bridge with that work with wrapped assets. So that is something people need to have the difference in it. Yes, in Solana, you can use the token extension. So SPL 22, this is what you will have to use. Basically, it's support ERC20 or the SPL token. And you can both use them for Entity.
Cool. Patrick, before we drop, may I take just a second, because we've recently launched
yeah, of course,
a very important program. So aside from everything that we've spoken to you today and what we are doing with Encode Club, there is also other stuff that Wormhole is working on to, for the developer community at large. What I'm showing you here is called the Wormhole Sigma Startup Program. And it's kind of like Sigma is that umbrella brand that we use for smaller programs within it. And we've recently launched the Sigma Build program. This is, think of it almost as a mini incubation program, or a larger extended grants program. It comes with some grant funding that's usually done in milestones. It's meant for early stage teams. So, I kind of assume a lot of people listening in are either early stage projects that are, curious about multi-chain, or maybe developers exploring capabilities of multi-chain. But generally, this is meant for early stage teams, right? So It comes with a lot of mentorship. It comes with all the support that we generally provide on the BD marketing side, as well as technical support side, as well as a small grant, right? So there's plenty of information here. I can paste this in if you want. There we go. All right. You can always talk to me or Pauline about this, or anybody associated with the foundation. There was also recently concluded the Sigma Accelerate, which we did with Encode Club, and there is a sprint coming up. We haven't announced on those dates, but there's going to be a hackathon following up in the coming months. So anyways, Sigma, I think if you haven't heard of this, worth exploring since you're embarking on your multi-chain developer journey, and this is a very fitting program.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both for the great talk. So Thursday, we'll have our next session to building your first application with Wormhole, going through Wormhole Connect and TypeScript SDKs. So this will be the same time, 4 p.m. Thursday, or 4 p.m. UK time. You know the time in your individual time zones. But yeah, hope you can all make it again for that. Thank you, everyone. And I'll be ending. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.